unconscious dialectic or something along those lines. I get it when I read that Trotsky quote. I was like, yes, that's what Hegel means.
Wait,
Like
what was that again?
what's that?
As I was getting up and running, what was the state quote again?
Oh, so I think it's a quote Harrison made where he said, well, he quoted from Trotsky, and Trotsky
Yeah.
made some. Oh, Harrison's not up yet right now, so I
Okay.
can't bring the quote up. But he has a quote about a fox and how a fox figures out what is a nutritious breakfast in quadrupeds that are smaller than it. But if it runs across a wolf, it knows to turn quantity into quality and turn around and run away, right? And so, and Trotsky was saying, there's more, well, the dialectic even exists in the actions of a simple creature like a fox, even if it's unconscious of I don't know, the specifics,
Oh,
uh, beyond.
The box connects act dialectically without having to understand the details of dialectical logic.
Right. Right. It just, it plays out the play without
it,
having to refer to the manual.
it's
Yeah,
like saying, oh, the animal follows the logic without knowing logic
yeah,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
is logic.
Yeah. Exactly. It literally is logical.
yeah.
And I just found it such an illuminating comment in, like I said, in reference to how Hegel refers to nature as, um, how does he put it? As it's been too long. It's been too long since the front of the book. The unconscious logic, like 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 logic lives in nature, but it's not conscious of it. I guess you could say something along those lines. And I'm always half tempted to try to like cast it in a mystical, like almost in a magical way. But after reading that Trotsky quote, the adherence of nature to um, the logic of reality, that makes more sense. Anyway, so now we're on water process. I think no,
Yeah. Wait, two?
or or
Oh,
no, the
we were at,
process
yeah, the
in its
process
totality.
totality. Yeah. There we
Yeah.
go.
So I'll just read this real quick and we'll get going. These neutral bodies returning into mutual relation form the chemical process in its complete reality. For the sides of the process are such real bodies. This sounds familiar. I think I've read this. Um, their me sorry, their mediation requires water, the abstract medium of neutrality. But the sides, being neutral on their own account, are not differentiated as against each other. Here we have the particularization of general neutrality, and with it also the particularization of the differences of the chemically active bodies in their mutual opposition. This is the so-called elective affinity, the formation of other particular neutralities through the breakup of those already present. Now, hang on. I said I've already read that before. Have we gone through this part?
I think we started a little bit into this. So yeah,
Okay.
I think we did. Because I thought we kind of stopped at dissociation, actually.
We might have. You know what? I think you're right. All right, so I'll read this dissociation. The dissociation of the neutral body is the beginning of its reversion to particular chemical bodies back to their indifference through a series of processes which are, on the one hand, peculiar. Each such dissociation is, on the other hand, itself inseparably linked with a combination, and similarly, the processes classified as processes of combination also directly contain the other moment, that of dissociation. To determine the peculiar place occupied by each particular form of the process and also which is the specific product, it is necessary to consider the concrete agents and concrete products involved. Abstract processes where the agents are abstract. Water alone acting on a metal or simply gases and so on certainly contain in themselves the totality of the process, but they do not exhibit its moments explicitly.
Yeah, and I think I had to follow through. I think I kind of got the addition for this paragraph, so where I was trying to map it out.
Yeah. In empirical chemistry, interest mainly centers in the particularity of the substances and products grouped together according to superficial abstract determinations in such fashion that no order is brought into their particularity. In this grouping, metals, oxygen, hydrogen, etc., metalloids, formerly called earths, sulfur, phosphorus, are placed side by side as simple chemical bodies and on the same level. The great physical diversity of these bodies is such that it straightway arouses opposition to such grouping. That's interesting because today's chemical table is based on the atomic makeup, which is interesting. I wonder what Hegel would make of that.
I
If
mean, there's still different ways they react, right? Depending on where they're at and which column they're in, basically.
yes, yes,
So that might expand more there.
yeah. But in equally chaotic fashion, the more abstract processes are put on the same level as those that have more reality. If scientific form is to be introduced into this sphere, each product must be defined according to the stage of the concrete, fully developed process from which it essentially results and from which it has its peculiar significance. For this purpose, it is equally essential to distinguish between the stages of abstraction or reality of the process. Animal and vegetable substances, moreover, belong to a quite different order. Their nature, far from being understood from the chemical process, is rather destroyed in it. What we grasp therefrom is only the way of their death, but these substances could principally serve to counteract the metaphysics prevalent both in chemistry and physics, the thoughts, namely, or rather muddled conceptions of the immutability of substances in all circumstances in the categories of the composition of bodies and their constitution out of such substances. Man, he does go on. It is readily granted that chemical substances in combination lose the properties they show in separation, and yet men imagine that they are the same things without these properties that they are with them, and that their possession of such properties is no consequence of their being products of processes. Interesting. The affirmative determination of the still indifferent body, the metal, is physically such that its properties appear in it as immediate. In the case of further determined bodies, however, their behavior and processes cannot be thus presupposed. Their primary essential determination springs solely from their place in the chemical process. Right. A further matter is the empirical, quite special particularity of reaction shown by bodies to all other particular bodies. A knowledge of this involves going through the same litany of reactions to every reagent. What is most striking, wow, this is a long one. Okay. What is most striking in this respect is to see the four chemical elements, oxygen, etc., placed as substances on the same level with gold, silver, etc., sulfur, etc. Gretchen. As if they had the same kind of independent existence as gold, sulfur, or as if oxygen had an existence like that of carbon. Their place in process indicates their subordinate abstract character, which distinguishes them in kind from metals and salts and shows that they certainly do not belong together with such concrete bodies. This place has been dealt with in full in 328. Thank God. The abstract middle term, which is internally broken in two, to which therefore two elements belong, water and air, being abandoned as a middle term, becomes the source from which the original, at first merely implicit, difference between the real syllogistic extremes acquires existence. This moment of difference, thus developed into an existence of its own, constitutes the chemical element as a completely abstract moment. These substances, far from being primary substantial foundations, as the term element at first suggests, are rather difference in its most extreme forms. Here, as in general, the chemical process is to be taken in its complete totality. The isolation of particular parts of formal and abstract processes leads to the abstract conception of the chemical process as being in general merely the action of one substance on another. Yeah. With the result that such numerous phenomena as occur seem almost secondary or accidental consequences, or at least as only externally connected with the process and are not treated as essential moments in the relationship of the whole. Okay, that makes sense. A full exposition of the chemical process in its totality would, however, require it as a real syllogism to be explicated also as a triad of closely interlinked syllogisms. Syllogisms which are not merely a simple connection of their termini, but with which, as active processes, are negations of their specific forms, and they would have to exhibit the interrelation of combination and dissociation knit together in a single process. Now, this
Mhm.
right here, I think, is extremely key to Hegel's system, because if you look at the very end of the three books, you find a triad of closely interlinked syllogisms. Um, Logic, nature, spirit, and those closely interlinked syllogisms cycle three times. So there we are. And now I need to go back and read the logic on syllogism in order to
Yeah, it's nice to.
better understand that. Okay, off to you, Kyle. What do you think? He's talking about the chemical process and how you can't really abstract pieces out of it and understand it at all.
Right. So you can each look and talk to, and he does talk about in his disease that's how each piece of it's a totality on its own, but in one-sided totality. And
Yeah.
I think we're of course going through this one-sided totality to see the whole totality, which is capable of being in its being for itself. So it does loop back upon itself. And then that's life.
hmm The it's also making me realize that if you read the philosophy of nature, any part in it as definitive, it's already negated by the fact that each book is part of a one-sided totality and therefore incomplete until spirit and the cycle of life keeps it cycling around in the triad. It's not actually reality that you're referring to when you're reading any of these three books. I mean, not really.
I now just had a sudden connection of the syllogism to a book trilogy or a movie trilogy, etc. Why it works so well.
Yeah.
It kind of has this process to it, doesn't it?
Mm, mm.
There we go. So Because I still couldn't figure out the syllogism. I had to throw it at an AI bot, and I'll see if it makes any sense.
Good luck. I've avoided them. I know other
Well,
people. I know people feed stuff into it, and I'm just like,
it's basically the kind of thing where you need to be an expert to know when it's not hallucinating. So it's useful in when it's like that.
yeah,
That's why I don't trust it outright.
yep.
Oop.
I trusted Skynet too much.
And it's too dumb. It's too incapable of that right now. It has to be another leap for that.
Yeah.
Just trying to think here. He does kind of go through this. He is talking about how the intronic syllogisms are here, though, and he this is what he actually goes through in the edition.
Yeah.
All right. Um, I guess I can start picking up here, but just because of how we have this set up, I forgot.
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
All right. Well, that's a news. Whereas the first process led to combustion, the processes of the neutral bodies against each other are at the same time their diremption or decompositions. And the separations of the abstract bodies from which we started, in this way, the pure metal with which we began, taken as immediately given, is now a result produced from the total body towards which we were advancing. Yeah, because we kind of start out with earths, then react acid base, go through neutralize, we have a new metal, basically.
Mm-hmm.
What is here decompose as concrete middle term is a real neutral substance, the salt, whereas in galvanism, the formal middle term, which was decomposed, was water, and in the process of fire, air. The forms and stages of this reduction vary, particularly in the process of fire and also that of the salt. For example, if the salt is brought to a red heat, the weak acid is made strong again. In the same way, lime gives off carbonic acid, since at this temperature, lime is supposed to have a greater affinity with caloric than with carbonic acid. Yeah, I'm assuming that's the old caloric that doesn't exist. Um, in this way, that metals are finally reduced. Wind, for example, sulfur, which as acid combined with a base, is driven off and the metal assumes a pure form. Few metals are found pure in nature. Most of them are only separated off by chemical action. This is the complete cycle of the chemical process. Before we can determine which stage of the process individual bodies belong, we must establish the definite order in which the stages of the chemical process succeed one another. Otherwise, we shall be dealing with a multitude of substances which, taken on their own, remain an unsystematized hodgepodge. The individualized bodies acquire their specific character of the process as follows. They are moments and products of the process they form, and they form the following system of determinants, differentiated corpality as the concrete elements now determine the state of individuality. A, which is here is air. Individualized and differentiated air yields the different kinds of gases, air itself being the totality of the four. Alpha, nitrogen, the abstract and different gas. Beta, oxygen, and hydrogen, the opposed forms of air, the former kindling and activating in opposition, the latter positive and indifferent in it. Gamma, carbonic acid gas, the earthly moment because it appears partially as earthy and partially as gas. Yeah, and the syllogism here it says that air mediates the extremes. Because this is also kind of a summary of the whole section, anyways, for chemistry.
Yeah.
Uh, the middle term here would be the air, which is the dispersed differentiated medium. You have two extremes for the combustible bases. So you have the hydrogen and oxygen sides on the extremes, which then unites. I guess the example here is the carbonic acid gas. I don't know. But that does ignite into the fire cycle.
Yeah.
Makes sense, but I don't see that here. Active
Oh,
opposition.
that's in B.
Well, B,
Cycle,
yeah, that's where we get to that, right?
cycle of fire.
Yeah, right. A led to B
Yeah.
because it appears partially as Earth, and so he just that's the same thing. Where was it? Air, fire, water, Earth. That's why he said earthy here. But it's the
Very
gas.
interesting.
It's the gas side of the Earth. It's right because air is first, and but it's also each year's like air, fire, air, earth, air, water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here the fire section, one of the moments which of the opposition cycle fire, the individual realized fire and its opposite, the combustible substance. It too forms totality. So alpha, the basis, the intrinsically combustible substance which in itself fiery, this is neither the indifferent substance, so the airy part where it's indifferent, to be posited only as a determinate difference, nor the positive, which is only to be limited by difference, but it is negativity in itself, time which is inwardly realized but still sleeps, as fire itself can be called active time, the quiescent existence of the sleeping time being only form. So this negativity is its quality, not as mere form of its being, but its very being as this form. Sulfur is the earthy basis, hydrogen as the aeriform basis, naphtha the vegetable and animal oils, and so on.
Mm. Vegetable.
Beta, yeah. The acids, namely sulfuric acid, the acid of combustible earthy substance, okay, nitric acid with its various forms, hydrochloric acid, where he has an aside how he must have be hydrogen be must be its radical, which yes, hydrogen is what makes acid acidic for it.
Mm.
And the earthy acids. So we have one, the abstract, we have earthy carbonic acid, two, the concrete arsenious acid, etc. Three, the vegetable and animal acid, citric acid, blood acid, formic acid, and four, in opposition to acids, the oxides and alkalis generally,
Interesting.
which here again, kind of remembering the syllogism for this section, we have the active opposition itself, which is so the difference is the extreme or is the middle term here. Um, so into the extremes themselves are the acid and bases themselves, which neutralize into water, which is neutrality and also produces salts, earths, and stones, where total body comes to view. And opposition acids, the oxides. Yeah. And this is kind of that's kind of where it's getting a little off, but I feel like it's kind of a self-similar shape as we know this dialectics to be.
Mm.
Okay. C, the other moment of the opposition is realized water. That's the completes the neutralities of acid and oxides, salts, earth, and stones. It is here, strictly speaking, the total body comes to view. Okay, yeah, it picked up that quote pretty well. The various gases are airs. The cycle of fire has not yet reached the stability of the totality. Sulfur is suspended in it as a basis over the other earthly bodies. The earths are white, simply brittle, the individual body as such, possessing neither the continuity of metal in its passage through process nor combustibility. Okay, so these are the four earths. The neutral substances are differentiated into a double series, which alpha, whose neutrality has its base only in the abstractness of water, and which exist as neutral products of both acids and alkalis, which transition is formed by silica, K, and talc. Your silica, as it were, the earthly metal, the pure cause of brittleness, which, through the abstraction of its singularity, combines specially with potassium to form glass, and as metal represents the process of melting in color and solidity, so does silica represent it in singularity. Silica is the colorless substance in which vitality has died away into pure form, whose inwardness is absolute discreteness, which You're getting what the chemical, yeah, it's silicon dioxide. Uh, as silica is the immediate, simple, unexplicated notion, so clay is the first earth with a difference, the possibility of combustibility. As pure clay, it absorbs oxygen from the air, but generally in its combination with sulfuric acid, it is an earthly fire. Yeah, like silica clay, right? Yeah.
Mm.
So silica becomes into a bigger form, which it's able to more react with oxygen than in itself, and other stuff to become a little more reactive. But generally, in its combination with sulfur porcelain, so porcelain, I guess, it is fire that is owes its hardness in crystallization. Water plays a less significant part than external cohesion, right? Talc or bitter earth is a subject of salt, so to this, the bitterness of seawater is due. It is intermediate taste, which has become principle of fire, and is especially the return of the neutral substance to that principle. So again, this is where it's mostly just neutral by base being the neutral product results. And here, beta, we have the antithesis of this, the genuine real neutral or calcareous substances, the alkaline, differentiated substances which decompose their earthly principle afresh and only need the physical element to constitute a process. The extinguished process which reinstates itself. Lime is the principle of fire, which is generated by the physical body in its own self. Forget, like,
Sorry.
lime is a chemical. So calcium hydroxide is lime,
Mm-hmm.
which it's just, it is any kind of calcium oxide. Okay. Calcium oxide, calcium hydroxide. So I feel like there is that general kind of pattern here because now, because again, that is, oh, that's calcium. Okay. Yeah, so we have the silicone side and the calcium side, which calcium.
Calcium.
I was looking at calcium and I was trying to find why do you not see silic there's silicone, which is closer to oxygen. Okay. Yeah, they're kind of two opposite ends. Okay. I think it is kind of seeing the where the four general reaction or substances are in the periodic table when I'm looking at this. And okay, let me just go back again because I figured this out. The neutral total body makes extremes. Again, this is AI. Middle, the neutral total body, now a concrete middle, not a merely abstract element. The extremes are the particular chemical bodies the neutral body reverts into by dissociation, and the different metals that appear as stable individuals. And now we have the metal back again, here as D, which is a resultant of the process. So it's the metal returning back to itself, is what Hegel's going through here.
Mm-hmm.
The earthly element, all of which determinations other than
Earth to
gravity,
earth, dust to dust.
yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
now fall outside of it, and in those which cause gravity to identical with light, covers the metals. As gravity is the being within itself in indeterminate externality, so as being within itself in light has reality. Thus metals do possess color, but on the other hand, their luster is this indeterminate self-propagating pure light which destroys color. Which that's an identity, I think. That's right, because pure light is pure identity in nature. The different states of metal, first continuity and solidity, and their readiness to enter into process, bitterness, punctiformity, capacity for oxidation, all these are passed through by the metal within itself. Alpha some metals are found in a pure state, beta, others only occur in the form of oxides or mixed with earths, hardly ever in a pure state. When they do, they are powdery, like arsenic, for example. Antimony some metals are so brittle and hard, they're easily pulverized. And gamma, finally, metal occurs as scoria, vitrified, and has the mere form of sameness of texture, as in the case of sulfur. Scoria or cinder. Okay, it's a pyroclastic rock, is what I'm finding on that one. That must be a different term.
Yeah.
The chemical process is, in fact, in general terms, life. Oh, that was the end of it. Okay, yeah, so that's kind of the pattern it goes, and this is like that's all we went over just now. The
Yeah.
entire chemistry.
Chemistry. Exactly.
Yeah, so that's the whole process where things kind of combine, come to something else, and we get a whole bunch of precipitates out. And the only thing of continuity that he falls through here, which I'm trying to think of, is the metal itself. Because everything else can't really exist without being chemically bonded to something else, is what he's saying here.
Mm-hmm.
Although even the beginning, oxygen only exists as we commonly see it through it being with something else. And that's how its reaction is how we know oxygen is there.
Yeah. Sorry.
Because the whole cannot be captured by just one mediation. If you stop at air and water as mediators, you stay too abstract. If you stop at fire opposition, you miss the achieved unity. If you stop at neutrality, you miss the return to indifference. And so, yeah, there it is again. Kind of, it's the being kind, and then I forget like the first half of essence, the second half of essence, and then so if you stop at air water mediators, you stay too abstract. So that's abstract indifference. Fire and opposition, there's no unity. You're at pure difference. In neutrality, you're still kind of separate in indifference. You're not actually completing back to a concrete indifference, which will, yeah, that still mirrors the overall process.
Hmm.
That's from, like I said, ChatGPT, but well, this is when you throw actual like Hegelian people into its knowledge base
Mm.
that's even capable of this. Okay. You want to anything else you want to say, or are we going to continue toward life?
I think we should continue toward life.
Okay. The chemical process is, in fact, in general terms, life. But the individual body in its immediacy is not only produced by the process, but also destroyed by it. So that the notion no longer remains at the stage of inner necessity, but is made manifest. But on account of the immediacy of the corporealities entering into the chemical process, the notion is everywhere infected with division. As a result, its moments appear as external conditions, and what is dissociated falls apart into mutually indifferent products. The fire and activation are extinguished in the neutral body and not spontaneously rekindled in it. The beginning and end of the process are separate and distinct. This constitutes its finitude and keeps it far from life and distinguishes it therefrom.
Hmm.
Yeah, so sort of the whole point is that the chemical process that's indifferent here is a sort of begins and ends. There's no new beginning from it on its own, which Hegel's talked about that earlier. Certain chemical phenomena have led chemistry to apply the determination of teleology in explaining them, which, yeah, I guess maybe you mean his. An example is the fact that an oxide is reduced in the chemical process to a lower degree of oxidation than that at which it can combine with the acid acting on it, while a part of it is more strongly oxidized. There, there here is a rudimentary self-determination of the notion from its own resources and its realization, and is thus not determined solely by conditions which are already outwardly to hand.
Mm.
It's reaction that differentiates itself internally without external motivation.
Hmm.
Yeah, not
Yeah, you're fine.
just yeah, I just noticed something on that print. Yeah, that is missing the paragraph number in the PDF. What do you know?
It is.
Yeah, that confused me for a second.
Yeah.
True, an appearance of vitality is there, but it is destroyed in the product. If the products of chemical process spontaneously renew their activity, they would be life. Yeah, again, it's going one direction and that's it. To this extent, then, life is a chemical process made perpetual. The determinants of the species of a chemical body is identical with its substantial nature. We are accordingly here still in the realm of fixed species. In the organic realm, on the other hand, the determinants of the species is not identical with the substantial nature of individual. On the contrary, the individual is, in keeping with its determinants, finite and just as much infinite. In the chemical process, the notion exhibits its moments continuously. The whole of the chemical process contains on the one side fixed determinateness in the mode of indifference, and on the other side the urge to be internally opposed to itself as an opposition in which indifference falls away. But quiescent being and this urge are distinct sides. The totality is posited only in itself or in principle. The unity in which both determinations are at once present did not come to existence. This unity as existent is the determination of life, and towards this nature strives. Life is present in principle in the chemical process, but inner necessity is not yet extant unity. Yeah, I don't know what to say again. It's just sort of going in depth to the whole other ways of saying why it's the chemical process as is just is and can't be life yet. It just trying to think it, but quiescent being and this urge are distinct sides. Yeah, so I guess because the process is not itself a process of process or a meta process, which is the infinity that life has there is the process continuing. Oh, y- you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. It's interesting because if you think about a process in terms of its constituent parts, you're not really talking about the process as a whole and its moving whole, because if you were talking about the process and its moving whole, it would be life.
Yeah.
The process and its, in its parts are an abstraction from life. So something like that.
He also says that life is distinguished because it's a self-sustaining process, whereas the other chemical processes are not self-sustaining. They eventually die out.
Yeah. But hmm, it's an interesting question. So, like, there's life on Earth and there's chemical processes on the Earth that exist within the process of life within the biome. But there are other planets around the solar system in which there are chemical processes going on that the environment helps to reproduce. Do we call that life? That's it's an interesting question to me. Anyway. It might sound a little
Yeah,
naive putting it that way, but it makes me wonder
I
just
mean,
based on that.
if you think about it, that is an in between, right? Between the singular reaction and life itself.
Right. But I mean, you look at these other planets and you see
Yeah.
that there are continuous chemical reactions going on that are reproduced in in another planet's system. But
Yeah.
then we look for signs of life, right? And we usually say, well, there's no signs of life anywhere else in the solar system.
That's
But there are self reproducing chemical reactions, which makes me wonder about our definition of life
I
itself.
mean, depending on what chemical process you're talking about, some of it's still kind of externally driven because it's part of the planet driving it rather than the individual itself reproducing itself.
Right.
Which, I mean, I still don't think they're still searching for life on one of Jupiter's moons, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's not like it's right. There's not a lot left. I didn't get this part complete. Uh, all right, I think we're good to pass on. I'm just going to actually read the number because it's not there.
Yeah, go ahead.
336. The nature of the chemical process, however, deposit has negated these immediate presuppositions, the basis of its externality and finitude, to alter at a later stage of the process the properties of bodies which appeared as results of an earlier stage, and to reduce these conditions to the rank of products. What is thus posited in general in the chemical process is the relativity of the immediate substances and properties. Body as an indifferent existence is thereby posited as a mere moment of the individuality, and the notion is posited into reality which corresponds to it, the concrete unity with self, self produced into unity from the particularizing of the different corporealities. A unity which is the activity of negating this, its one sided form of reference to self, of sundering and particularizing itself into the moments of the notion, and equally of bringing them back to that unity, is the organism, the infinite process which spontaneously kindles and sustains itself.
I'll be right back.
All right. So yeah, the body as such is the elements of the individual. Yeah, it's like each time we step up, we get to something physical, which is mere moments of some higher physicalness, higher physical individual. Ah, mm. We have now to make the transition from inorganic to organic nature, from the prose to the poetry of nature. In the chemical process, bodies are not merely superficially, but on all sides. Every property is a face, cohesion, color, luster, opacity, resonance, transparency. Even specific gravity, which seems the deepest and simplest determination, does not survive. It is precisely in the chemical process that the relativity of the apparently indifferent determinations of the individuality, which is the essence of the flux of accidents, comes to light. Body reveals the transiency of its existence and its relativity in its being. If we are to describe what a body is, this was earlier, the whole cycle of its alterations must be stated. For the true individuality of body does not exist in a single state, but is exhausted and displays only in this cycle of states. The totality of shape does not survive just because it is only a particular totality. The individual body thus receives its due, i.e., because it is finite, it does not endure. Thus, there are metals which, as oxides or neutralized by acids, run through the whole gamut of colors. They can form transport neutral salts, salts generally being the death of color. Brittleness, solidity, smell, and taste equally disappear. It is this ideality of the particular that is in here displayed. Bodies pass through the whole cycle of such possible determinations. Copper, in this example, in its pure form as a metal, is red in color. Copper sulfate gives a blue crystal. Copper hydrate as a precipitate is ultramarine, and murate of copper is white. Other oxides of copper are green, dark gray, reddish brown, etc. Azurite has still another color, and so on. The reaction varies according to the agents, and the chemical body is only the sum of its reactions. That is to say, the totality of the reactions exists only as a sum, not as an infinite return into self. Yep, finite versus infinite. It is all reactions in which the body combines with others in synsomates, in oxidation, and in neutrality. It preserves its specific nature, but only implicitly, not existently. Iron always remains in itself iron, but only in itself, not in the matter of its existence. But it is in the preservation of existence, not of being itself, that we are interested more precisely, that is, what is in itself should exist, or that what exists should be in itself. The cycle of particular reactions constitutes the universal particularity of a body, but this exists only implicitly or in itself, but is not a universal existence. Only in the process of fire is activity imminent, an instant of spontaneous life, whose activity, however, hastens to its death. But because the immediate shape in which particular determinations are present here is destroyed, we here have a transition in which the implicit universal of the determinants also comes into existence. And this is the self-preservation of the organism. It acts and reacts again, the most diverse powers. In each reaction, it is differently determined, but equally also remains a single unity within itself. This implicit determinants of a kind now also exists. It enters into relationship with another, but also breaks off its involvement and is not neutralized in it. It preserves itself, on the contrary, in the process which nonetheless is determined by it and in its other. The infinite form of the soul of individuality is still materialized in shape, and so reduced to a unity which is not infinitely free form from its form within itself, but in its existence is quiescently enduring being. This quiescence, however, is contrary to the infinite form, for this is unrest, movement, activity. Only as such does it manifest what it is in and for itself. There's that again. Haven't seen a lot of that since the logic. In itself, for itself, and for itself.
Yep. Hmm.
The persistence of the moments of the infinite form and shape, each of which moments can have independent material existence, is of course also the entering into existence of the infinite form. But here the unity of the form does not yet have the truth within it, which it is. But now, since the chemical process precisely resembles the dialectic through which all the particular properties of bodies are brought to destruction, it is the negating of the immediate presuppositions which are principles of its finitude. Wow, that actually makes sense. It just really
Yeah.
clear in my mind. What alone endures is a self-subsistent infinite form, the pure immaterial individuality which is for itself and for which material existence is alterable through and through. Right now it's kind of reminding me of this of substance in essence,
Yeah.
which is close to the end too. and for which material existence is alterable through the chemical process is the highest to which inorganic nature can reach. In it, she destroys herself and demonstrates her truth to be the infinite form alone. The chemical process is thus, through the dissolution of shape, the transition into the higher spirit of the organism, where the infinite form makes itself as infinite form real. In this example, the infinite form is the notion which here attains to its reality. This transition is a raising of existence to universality. Here, therefore, nature has risen to the existence of the notion. The notion is no longer merely immanent, it's no longer submerged in nature's mutual externality of being. It is the free fire, as purged of matter and as materialized into existence. The moments of what exists are themselves raised to this ideality, have only this being of ideality, and do not fall back into restricted forms of existence. We thus have objective time, an imperishable fire, the fire of life. Heracles too declared his soul to be fire, and the dry souls to be the best. Because
Hmm.
yeah, because
Mhm.
because water is neutral in this conception.
Yeah. Hey, section 3, organics. What? We made it.
Yeah, which I'm trying to think. What's the overall shape here again? Yeah, that's the terrestrial, the planet nature, the animal organism. Okay, from the earth itself to plants to animals is the three main sections. He actually called it the terrestrial organism, which that was a thing at the time, too.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, what does this say here? Organics. The real totality of body as the infinite process in which individuality determines itself to particularity or finitude and equally negates this and returns into itself, reestablishing itself at the end of the process as its beginning, is thus an elevation into the first ideality of nature, but an ideality which is fulfilled and as self-related negative unity has essentially developed the nature of self and become subjective. This accomplished, the idea has entered into existence at first in immediate existence life. This is firstly as shape, secondly as particular, uh, thirdly as individual concrete subjectivity, the animal organism. So it goes through the geological, then the vegetable, and
Yeah.
then the animal. And and once again, Hegel answers my goddamn question. If you're looking at life in the solar system outside of Earth, you can find it. Life comes in the shape, the universal image of life, the geological. So processes on other planets fall under the geological organism. There it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
And it's
I
kind of
swear to
like,
God, I'm always sitting here like trying to figure out, you know, how this shape, how these shapes measure up to the real universe. And yeah, he answers your questions, you know. It's it's uncanny. Geological, vegetable, animal. The idea has truth and actuality only insofar as it is determined as subjective. Life, as only the immediate idea, is therefore external to itself, is non-life only the corpse of the life process. The organism is totality of inanimately existing mechanical and physical nature. Distinguished from the stage as the beginning of subjective vitality, the living organism in the vegetable kingdom. The individual, but as external to itself, still falling apart into its members, which are themselves individuals. It is first in the animal organism that the differences of shape are so developed as to exist essentially only as its members, thereby constituting it subject. Vitality as natural falls apart into the indeterminate plurality of living things, which, however, are in themselves subjective organisms, and it is only in the idea that they are one life, one organic system of life. He goes on from there. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Let's see where we're going to go. We're going to go from page 273. See how far down he goes. Um, mm, History of the Earth. I wonder how long this fucking section is. Sorry. You know what? I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that we should go out to 280 to structure the Earth here, 340. I know that seems like a lot, but I have the feeling that now he's going to be in summary mode, like big picture high school history teacher mode, when she talks about the history of the Earth in terms of, and then he's going to go, you know. So why don't we do that from the beginning of that chapter to the structure of the Earth and see how far we get. I promise I will read it all before we get there. Um, and maybe we can just talk in summary and go on to the next. And then this section can go a lot quicker. Sound good, comrades?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Jim, you staying warm out there? The lights are still on, so that's good.
And a lot of snow.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
heard.
fire weather this week.
Fire weather?
Like it's super dry and a lot of wind.
Yeah. That's not good.
Yeah. Last week they actually had to evacuate a Walmart in northwestern Oklahoma because of the fires and smoke.
Yeah. Jeez. All right, comrades. Have a great night.
You too.